Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire, while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today's guest is an amazing man. He is still an active duty member in the United States Army Special Forces. He is a gentleman who is changing lives through all of his experiences, all of his resilience. Machine Nick, it is so great to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me on here, brother. I appreciate it.
I love that freaking name. That's machinenick.com. It's a great tag. I want to go back into your history and really kind of dig down into, I always ask everybody that was in the military, what was your premise behind stepping up to that line and signing the dotted line and getting into the military?
Yeah, I mean, this is an easy answer for me. It was 9/11.
Okay.
I had taken a look at the military as a potential option when I was in high school, but I ended up going to college to play football. Only reason why I went that route. And then, my sophomore year was 9/11, and that was the tipping point for me. I think a lot of people know where they were when that happened. I think it's a huge tipping point for a lot of people in our generation. So when you entered, what was the defining difference between, did you kind of understand what to expect when you got in, or is it something that where you're like, I got to get in, I got to do something. What is it that you need me to do? Yeah, very little expectation. I don't come from a real robust military family. I knew I wanted to be in special operations really for two reasons. One, I felt like my athletic capability would be best suited doing that. But more significantly, I just wanted to be at the very tip of the spear. I wanted to be at the very front of this fight.
You sound exactly like that guy.
Yeah. It was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it big. I'm going to go all in. But not much expectations, man. I decided to go the Army route to become a Green Beret. And other than, seeing some movies, John Wayne, John Rambo, and a little bit of homework I had done before I signed the dotted line, I really didn't have much expectations going into it.
You didn't try to sign up for the Rambo route?
I mean, I kind of did, I guess.
You kind of did?
I can't fly a helicopter, but,
Yeah, right. I love it. And, no Terminator movies before that either,
Right.
No, so when you went through Green Beret training, and I don't think there's a lot of civilians that understand the rigors of going through special operations selection, let alone going through the pipeline to be able to become a full operator. What was the selection process like? What was it when you started? Did you ever have any thoughts of, shit, this is crazy?
Not really.
That's good.
Yeah, not really. Selection and all the different selections based on the units, they're all a little different.
Right.
They certainly have some similarities, and that is going to be really difficult. Physically, it's going to push you mentally to your breaking point or beyond that. SF selection proved to be just that, but there really wasn't any point during that 3 weeks, or I'm sorry, when I went through it was 2 weeks. It's currently 3 weeks, but
oh wow, the
2 weeks that I went through selection, there was at no point was I really second guessing my decision to be there. It was just broken these tasks down to the absolute minute and just get to the next minute and then get to the next minute beyond that and just take it in small chunks and just keep going.
How do you translate that when you talk to other individuals who maybe haven't went through that? I mean, all the tasks that you have to go through, physical and mental tasks. How do you break that down for somebody who's never been through one of those things to be able to utilize those same kind of skills in their daily life?
Yeah, it's actually quite simple. And this is something I think a lot of us do naturally, maybe some with a little bit more deliberate focus or intent. But you've got this macro, goal in mind, this mission. And for selection specifically is 2 weeks long. All right. Now, 2 weeks when you're going through that kind of training and those types of events, it's a marathon. But it's a marathon that's broken down into hundreds of little small sprints, right? You need to be able to perform at the micro level. So while oftentimes the overall ambition or goal or mission can just become so daunting if you focus on that for too long, it can become very easily to self-doubt. Man, I don't know if I can make it all the way to the finish line. Right. Well, perhaps shift your focus to just what is this next small task I need to do in the next 10 minutes or next 1 hour or next day or whatever. Focusing on that. Right. There's either a strategy in place, ideally, that this task is put there on purpose, or in terms of selection, that task is put there in front of you outside of your control. So it's like, this is where my focus is going to be. It's not 2 weeks down the line or 2 years down the line. It's let me just do the best I possibly can in the next 15 minutes. That's it. So just zero in, I guess, that focus.
I love that. And it speaks to what you talk about as well, a mindset, that warrior ethos. Tell me more about, how that translates into your life and how that's translated you to, walking the path that you want to walk.
Yeah. So the warrior ethos, man, that comes from the soldier's creed, which is, verbiage that is literally rammed into your head from the second you show up to basic training. And for me, it was down at Fort Benning back in 2007. So this mantra is one that you just repeat over and over and over again. The warrior ethos comes from that. And, to just run through them quickly, I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. Boom. Words I'll never forget. And because that had such an impact on me from my earliest moments in the military that have stayed with me throughout, I've used those 4 tenets really as just a framework to describe what I refer to as a warrior mindset. And while these tenets have a very strong military tone to them on purpose, it does translate into a way of thinking and aspects of a mentality that is able to be leveraged by anybody, regardless of what you do for a living, regardless of your profession or your lifestyle. Right. So I will always place the mission first. To me, that's discipline, right? That's what that breaks down to. If I'm always placing the mission first, it's going to begin with discipline, right? Doing the things that we need to do, whether we feel like doing them or not. I will never accept defeat. To me, that translates into resilience, right? Mental toughness, grit, the ability to keep moving forward when things get hard. And then more importantly, in a lot of ways, getting back up after you get knocked down. So our relationship with failure is deeply rooted within that resilience. Right. I'll never quit. One word that translates to is persistence, and more specifically, a persistence despite achievement. So just simply dedicating ourselves to getting 1% better every single day forever. Like satisfaction doesn't exist. We're going to continue to grow and stretch and strive even after hitting milestones. And then lastly, I will never leave a fallen comrade. That just means commitment, right? An unwillingness to break an ironclad contract that we establish with ourselves. The willingness to do whatever it takes by any righteous means necessary.
I love those. It just brings it's almost joy to hear that stuff because it's so powerful, and it's one of those things that people actually took that into account outside of just the military and first responder community. It could be a lot better place, I'm guessing.
I would agree. Yeah.
Now, I want to go into that resilience part because you really had to use that part of it for yourself to continue on. In 2013 was your second rotation into Afghanistan. Tell me more about what happened. I'm sure you've told this story millions of times, but it really speaks to what your resilience is.
Yeah, the short version on that deployment, I was wounded in action on 3 separate occasions. First time I took some grenade shrapnel to the back of my shoulder. Second time, I took an AK-47 round to the face. And then the third time, I took a bunch of PKM machine gun rounds to both of my legs, which was the result of an insider attack, meaning a guy that we had been working alongside of. He turned on us. The most catastrophic insider attack that we have on record. There were 12 Americans killed or wounded, including myself and other 7-8 Afghans that were killed or wounded. So an absolute mass casualty scenario. The ultimate result of that event for me was the amputation of one of my legs well above the knee. So, I would spend a year at Walter Reed going through my initial recovery, learning how to live life as a one-legged dude, learning how to operate a prosthetic limb, kind of the basic life skills type stuff. And then got back to my unit, which at the time was 3rd Group out of Fort Bragg, was offered a full medical military retirement. And when I say offered, I mean, it was really being forced on.
I was going to say, here it is. It's yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had to really dig in and refuse to accept no for an answer many, many times and throw a couple punches back in the administrative fight I found myself in with the Army, at the end of which, I was successful. I was able to stay in. And then I began working my way to get back to my detachment, which really was the goal from the very beginning.
How much did that ride on you that the Army is like, no, we want you to leave?
Yeah, it was disappointing, in many ways. In a lot of ways, I do understand it. Right. The medical evaluation board process is really catered to getting service members out. And the majority of them that are going through that process want to get out, and they're already looking for that next chapter in their life to start. So it is, in a lot of ways, built to accommodate that, and the individuals that facilitate that process are conditioned to who they assist. I was coming in as an oddball. I was coming in, I was completely unreasonable. I was going completely against the grain.
Right.
So on one hand, I understood it. On the other hand, it was certainly frustrating. The disappointment part comes in because I was ultimately successful at doing that. And a huge part of what made that successful is what I do within the Army. The fact that I'm a Green Beret, that I'm a member of the Special Operations world. And, the military is a business. It's like any other business. And you start looking at what the bottom line is, it's a lot easier to replicate another job in the Army as opposed to someone who's a Green Beret. And the amount of money and resources and time that's been pumped into us is a factor when they are making that kind of decision. And it's unfortunate because especially during the time that I was wounded, there were a lot of service members that were getting banged up in Iraq or Afghanistan, and a lot of them wanted to stay in. A lot of them could have continued to provide an enormous amount of value to their units and to the organization at large. And most were unable to do that as I was. So I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. I just would have liked to have seen that being extended to more of us.
And that speaks to your character. I mean, that's amazing to fight to get back in. And then once you succeeded to get back in, what was that mountain like to be able to get back to what you considered functional? Because was that kind of what your mindset was, I need to get back to what I was, or better than that? Was that kind of the mindset?
100% from the very beginning, Rob. From the time I was in the intensive care unit at Walter Reed, still fighting for my life in a lot of ways.
Right.
My focus was getting back to the team, getting back to my detachment and going back into combat. Just simply staying in the Army was unacceptable. Even just going back overseas in a non-combat role was unacceptable. I was going back to doing what I know I'm put on this earth to do. And that level of clarity in that vision is what I attest a lot of my successes to, because I was met with countless times of doubt and frustration and fear and pain and setbacks. It was a roller coaster ride. But in every single one of those instances, when I was lying face down on the ground, sometimes literally, I had that thing to grasp onto. And that's what was able to keep me in relatively a positive mind space and just look at this as a complex problem that needed a solution.
So, we talked about like when you went through the selection process and you didn't have doubts. like when you got to this point, and I'm guessing you're a pretty, physically, mentally tough ass dude. When you got to this point where you were finally kind of seeing that wall, and that wall was knocking you back, and you're like, no, I'm going to go over the damn wall. But what did that fail? It wasn't even failure, but what did that struggle feel like that first time when you're like, hey, I need to walk on this prosthetic, or I need to, start moving this way? What did you say in your mind to yourself that first time?
The first time was a phrase that I still use today. Actually, I still have it written up on a whiteboard in my closet right now, which is where I, get myself ready in the morning to get upright and get going. Yeah. And it's just, this is the cost of admission. And I would just say that to myself repeatedly, like, you asked for this, bro. And like, this is what this is going to take. And, it's an easy thing to say. It's a much more difficult thing to live. Right. Fortunately for me, I think what led to me being able to do that at scale and with consistency was eventually realizing the amount of value that exists within those failures. And me coming up as an athlete, a hyper type A individual, I had this mentality that I will never fail at anything. Like, I'm always going to win. And while winning is important, and as much as I hate to lose, I was able to modify my relationship and understanding of what failure is. And it's an essential aspect of the game that you're playing if you're playing it at that high level, because that's where the wisdom is located. That's where the knowledge exists. And if you can put your pride and your ego aside for a second and be willing to take that risk into the realm where failure is almost certainly going to happen, then you learn from that and you ram that knowledge back into your system, back into your program, back into the process, back into that habit or whatever to make you better. And that's, again, easy to say, difficult to do. But if you can force yourself to do that, right, and you do it again and again and again, now you become this weapon that is literally seeking failure and discomfort, because you know that that's where the improvement lies.
You need to make a freaking shirt with that, with your logo, and that you have to. And I want the first one. That's freaking, I love that. I absolutely love that. That's a great phrase. Now, once you got kind of to that point where you're like, hey, I'm back. I'm getting there. And now you're an assistant detachment commander, correct?
Yes, sir.
How did you continue to push yourself to those next levels where a lot of people would just kind of say, hey, I'm back. This is good enough.
Yeah. And that's the third tenet in that warrior ethos. I will never quit is that persistence does not go away. That content doesn't exist. Satisfaction doesn't exist. And sometimes I'll get pushback on that. Like, aren't you satisfied in your marriage? And my answer is no, I'm not. And I'm as happily married as it gets. But I am striving to be a better husband. I need to strive to be a better father. Satisfaction and happiness are two wildly different things. You can be perfectly happy and unsatisfied at the same exact time. So by living through, kind of these mantras and these ethos, I made it to the top of a mountain. I made it back to the team. I made it back into combat as a one-legged guy, which had never happened before in the history of the military. And roger that, pat on the back, high five with my boys, spray a couple beers on each other, and then it's zero in on the next objective. Like, what's next? Like, keep climbing and keep striving. Certainly, if you do not live that way in the special operations world, you will not stay there for very long. You will no longer be an asset. But just in general, in terms of life, man, I mean, the second we stop striving and stretching and growing, we're no longer living life. Life is living us, and you're just waiting to die. Like, this is a gift, man. This life that we have here is as close to the definition of a miracle as it gets. Yeah. And why not just leave it all out on the field, and why not push it to the absolute limit?
From the lips of somebody who truly understands that. I mean, that's in your book, Objective Secure. There has to be so much power in there for any individual to just take one piece and put into their life. What was the premise behind writing that book?
So when I got back from my first deployment as a one-legged guy, and slowly began putting myself out there on social media a little bit, it was a difficult transition for me to go through, but the questions came pouring in. How did you do what you did? And after answering those questions thousands of times individually, I just decided to document this answer,
Right.
And it was purely selfish, to be honest with you, Rob. It was just so I could be more efficient. And I could just copy, paste, send, boom, here you go. So I did spend about a week, and I just created this outline. It was really just a guide, step 1, step 2, like this is what I did. And then I used it that way for years. And come, mid 2020, it's like peak COVID time. We're all locked down, and, the gyms are closed and the fight house are closed. And we're doing these weird half-on work schedule, like trying to figure out how to stay productive when we can't go near each other. It was a strange time for all of us, right?
Right.
One of my best friends, we played football together in college. He randomly hit me up and just said, "Hey, I think you need to write a book." Out of nowhere. And my first response was, "Get out of here. I have no interest in doing this at all." And, I had a lot of extra time and energy on my hands, though, that I don't do well with idle time. So I gave it a little bit of thought. I realized I did have this product that I had been using, and the feedback had been tremendous. So I decided to just kind of keep going with it. I just kept adding to it. And, I looked up about 4 months later, and I was sitting on like 75,000 words. And I was like, holy shit.
You did have something to say.
We're actually going to do this. Yeah. And so I tell that story because while it's a book now, and there are examples in there that I lived through and some personal experience type stuff, it still is the exact same thing it was back in 2016. It's just it answers that question. How did you do what you did? Why did you do what you did? And the greater challenge for me was taking some of this military language and jargon, which I enjoy, and it's very much part of who I am, but just dissecting that down and translating it so that it's relatable to anybody, regardless of what you do.
That's awesome. And that picture on the front, man, that just speaks volumes. I mean, what was it? What did it feel like the first time that you put on your prosthetic?
It's a big moment, It's a big moment. You spend a lot of time dreaming about that moment, and I explain it this way. It's for the second time in my life, I took my first steps, and I had my prosthetic guy there, and my father was there, and my now wife was there, and it's an emotional moment, and you kind of go down back, and you're walking down and back, and he's making these little adjustments. And, all of a sudden the confidence is starting to come around, like, oh, you know what? I think I can do this. And you move a little bit faster. And then boom, next thing you know, you are face down on the ground, which is,
I can't imagine that you went slowly.
Oh no, I was like full blown yard sale. It was a disaster. But it's an essential part of this process. And, I'm on the ground. I look up at my prosthetist, and he's like, all right, man, now get up. And it was in that one moment in time where I learned, 2 things. One is falling down is inevitable. And 2, I need to figure out how to get back up and then just do it again. So, a huge milestone. And, from there, it just, like anything else, man, you just keep working at it and you get better. And next thing you know, it kind of becomes second nature.
I love that. Make sure you go to machinenick.com. You can find your book there. You can find all the stuff about his speaking, everything like that. What does the future look forward to you? What are you looking for as you move forward in your career and also with speaking and stuff?
Yeah, so I just left the detachment life behind me just a few months ago, which was a difficult transition in itself, man. You come into this line of work and you want to be one of the guys on the ground kicking down the door forever.
Yes.
It's one of those things, like many professions, where it takes its toll and you can't do it indefinitely. So I've made that transition now. I'm just at the next level of leadership, above the team level. So I'm looking forward to learning this new role that I have now. And while I'll always miss being, the guy getting on the bird to go do the mission, it's actually quite a fulfilling position. You move up in leadership, and while you lose some intimacy with the guys on the ground, your span of influence gets wider, which is actually really cool. So I'm really enjoying it, surprisingly enjoying it. So I got a lot to learn there. And then, I'm in a very grateful position, Rob, where, I know what my life looks like post military service time. And a lot of guys and gals struggle with that transition. You become a civilian and it's like, what do I do with myself? There's a huge void. There's a vacuum that's left there that people try to fill. I know what that is for me. And in fact, I'm doing it now, and it's a passion project. It's a side hustle. It's a nights and weekends thing, but I've assembled a team around me now. It's grown to about 7 other people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where we work on this when we're able to. And you mentioned a couple things, speaking, consulting work, workshops, seminars. I'm writing 2 additional books now. So
wait a second. You were hesitant on the first one. Now it's going to be like a series, right?
Dude, it's wild what you can learn so late in life. Like,
I love it.
I wrote Objective Secure when I was 38, going on 39. And if I was writing something before that, it was because I had to, right? School, work. It is wildly different when it's something that you're interested in. And it turns out I actually have a great passion for writing. So
that's awesome.
I imagine I will continue to do that indefinitely. And it's going to be a fun ride, man. So we'll see how it plays out.
I love it. I mean, the ability for you to be able to inspire. Once you got in the leadership position, I always love to hear this answer. The legacy that you want to leave with the next generation of Green Berets. What does that legacy that look like that you want to leave for them, so that when they get in austere environments or when they get those challenges thrown at them, what does that look like from your perspective?
If I could summarize it in one sentence, this is the only limitations that exist are the ones you place on yourself. And that sounds like a bumper sticker slogan. It probably is. I'm sure it's on many T-shirts, but it's very real.
Right. It is very real.
It's very real. It all starts and ends in your mind, with your mentality and your mindset. You can have the most perfect strategy with the X's and O's and tactics can all be dialed in, but if you don't have the mentality to go along with it, then it's not going to matter. It's not it doesn't make any single one of a difference. So it all begins upstairs. And if you believe in what you've set your sights on, who's to say that you can't make it happen?
Right.
That would probably be what I'd like to, leave most behind, whether that's to the next generation of Green Berets or, more selfishly to my kids.
Oh, I love that. Now, as a father, like what was the transition from when, obviously when you have one leg, it's different for the kids, or did they just kind of roll with it? What was that transition like as a dad?
There really wasn't one. They've only known me as a one-legged guy. So, my oldest is 5 and my youngest is 2. So I lost my leg almost 10 years ago. That's their life. Yeah, so that's it. And I'll tell you a quick, funny story. I went to an event at my son's school. He's in kindergarten. It was like called Dads and Donuts, So all dads come in and we eat donuts. They give us a tour of the school. We hang out for probably an hour or two. It's cool. So we're in this cafeteria hanging out, and all of his classmates are all like looking over at this like 6'6", one-legged robot type looking dude, and they're all like, "What is happening?" Trying to process all this information. And, kids are great; they have no filter. They just let it rip. So they're talking. Their dad's like, "He got a robot leg. He's got the robot leg." The dads are all like, "Hey, okay, take it easy, buddy. Like, let's not just like, we don't know where to draw the line here if this is appropriate or not." A couple of my son's buddies come over and they're like, "Hey, Dom, your dad has a robot leg." And Dom's like, "Yeah, he got shot by a bad guy, but him and his friends killed him. So it's all good." It's just, this is just the way that they know me, man.
Awesome.
And so, no transition there. I'm sure at some point when he gets a little older, we'll have a little bit more heart-to-heart type conversation on some details. But he's very proud of
that's so awesome. That's the best description ever. That's your see. I think there's 2 shirts that you're missing on your website. It's that one on the back with your logo on the front, and then the other one that you have. I think those would sell like hotcakes.
I think you're right.
My dad got shot in the leg, but the guy's dead, so don't worry about it.
All good.
Oh my gosh, it's been great, Nick. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you go to machinenick.com. I always end the podcast the same way. You ready for 3 questions?
Send it.
All right. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give your self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Patience is a skill, and the sooner you learn it, the better equipped you're going to be.
I need that now.
Yeah.
The second question is, there's so many people that are going through challenges and struggles in their own lives and in their own different ways. What would be 2 habits that you would tell for people to start doing either morning, afternoon, nighttime, whatever, to continue to move forward in life?
I'm a huge advocate for journaling, whether or not that's 1 minute a day or 10. It's an asset to leverage. One, it has a therapeutic value, which is proven by science, but 2, and more specifically and more importantly, and for some of us, there's an analytical value as long as you're honest with yourself. And by journaling, that's a tool that can help us increase our self-awareness and our honesty, which is something that a lot of us struggle with in today's hyper-focused, hashtag filtered world that we now all live in.
Yes.
And then the second habit is, I'm an early morning riser, and this isn't uncommon where people stress the importance of waking up early and getting after it early. I am one of those. It just fits within my schedule. However, the value behind doing that is it opens up a window of time in which we can prioritize ourselves guilt-free. That's the key. So whether it's early at a.m. or it's late at night, I mean, people work the graveyard shift. It's like, oh, shit, well, that just doesn't apply to me. It's like, no. Valid point, right? You can't wake up at 4 a.m. because you're working.
Right.
The key, the essential aspect of this is to carve out a moment of time daily, ideally, where you can be selfish. You can prioritize you. And those of us that have a million things going on, wives, husbands, kids, hobbies, jobs, like all the responsibilities in the world, if we fail to prioritize ourselves, we will be worthless to those that depend on us. So for me, by getting up that extra 90 or 2 hours prior to I really owe anybody anything, that just gave me that window to focus on what I need to do for me.
That is some great advice. I hate mornings. I'm a late night guy though. That's the hard part. I've always never been a morning guy. I think it might be the fire service. It drives me nuts.
I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, I have zero interest in getting up at that time. I don't know if I can consider myself a quote morning guy. I don't know what that means. Does that mean you do it? Does it mean you like it? Because I don't like it, but I do it. So
see, I like that statement because it's always funny. Like every once in a while, I'll run into that person that's like, "Oh, I love waking up in the morning." I'm like, "Who the hell are you?"
Yeah, I don't know. They're out there.
They're out there. They're out there.
Is when I'm
you commit
to
it. I like that.
So, yeah.
I like that. All right, last question here. If you could have coffee with 3 individuals at a firehouse table, so in other words, nothing is off the table and talking about who, and they can be deceased or alive, who would those 3 people be and why?
I would have coffee with Prince Hector of Troy, who gets a real bad rap. Obviously you've seen the movie Troy. Yep. Brad Pitt kills him, drags him behind the chariot. Hector of Troy was amongst the greatest warriors that this world had ever known by a mile. And not only was he a great tactician and warrior and fighter, but he was an amazing leader and loyal husband and loyal servant. And he inspired hundreds of thousands of people. He is the definition of champion as far as I'm concerned. So to be able to sit down with him and pick his brain would be great. I would have coffee with my grandfather. He is still with us. Any moment in time I get a chance to spend with that guy is one that is incredibly value added for me personally and somewhat selfishly. He's 88 right now, so I don't know how many more engagements we have together. So I would absolutely take that every opportunity minute there. And then I'm going to say both my sons. And, that may sound kind of lame, but those of us that have passions and ambitions in addition to what we are doing to make ends meet, right? We're in the grind doing what we need to do. And we also have this vision of our future selves that takes the extra effort and time outside of that. And those of us that have kids. And I'm explaining a trinity that most of us live, right?
Yeah.
What I do to put food on the table, the people who I'm feeding and who depend on me, and then what I want to do with this gift of life. And it can be really difficult when we get that moment of time with our families to be in the moment because we're thinking about either the responsibilities we have to keep a roof over the head, or we're thinking about the ambition. We're thinking about the dream, and I want to get after that. And a lot of times our families can take third place within those three priorities in life.
So true.
I struggle with this myself. I make this mistake still consistently. It's probably one of my biggest weaknesses, and one that my wife is very quick to help me on,
Right.
I need to do a better job at that. So, and I just say this because I'm in this game now if our families matter to us, which for most cases, let's just stay optimistic and positive that is the case.
Right.
When you're in that moment, be in that moment. Put the phone down. It doesn't matter unless there is a Scud missile heading towards my house. I don't give a shit what's going on at work. Right? That problem will be there tomorrow, or that problem will be there in 4 hours from now. I think that's why that's on my mind. So to have, a sit down coffee, maybe we got a couple Legos going at the same time.
Oh, heck
sandwiches.
Lego coffee cups.
That moment as well.
There you go. I love it. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Make sure you go to machinenick.com. Thanks again for taking time.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.